It's as strong as a spell. I'll never tell. Yeah, I like you, that's for sure.
Hi guys, welcome back to Exmo Lex. As you can see, I am joined again today by my wonderful husband, Brendan.
Howdy.
So today we thought it would be fun to talk to you guys about the LDS plan of salvation. So this is something that is pretty much like the whole religion. Like, without this, the religion doesn't exist. It's their whole, what would you call it? Yeah, their reality. It's the, reality that they accept as fact. It's kind of in the name, the plan of salvation. It is the plan, Heavenly Father's plan, God's plan for everybody on earth, including before everybody was born, our life here on earth, and after we die. I want to make this video for people who, were never members of the church and so don't really know anything about this, but also for those of us who already have left. I think it's kind of funny to look back on this and just, it's so convoluted and honestly absurd. Once you, are on the other side of it, looking back at it and seeing like all the little things that go into it, it makes you be like, wow, I can't believe that that is what I accepted as reality.
It's far-fetched.
Yeah, not to be mean to anybody, but from an ex-Mormon perspective, it's a little bit wild. So I think what we're gonna start with is I'm gonna put it up on the screen. I'm gonna show you a picture of the plan of salvation, like a diagram. The map that I found on the church's website. This is like the basic simplistic version. So you'll see on it the premortal existence, that is life before we are born here on earth. The veil is what separates the premortal existence from now, and then it has mortality, death, the spirit world, the resurrection, and then finally final judgment, which has all the different levels of heaven. And you may have heard, even if you're not a Mormon, you may have heard that there's different levels of heaven within Mormonism, and that is true. They are the celestial kingdom, the terrestrial kingdom, the telestial kingdom, and outer darkness. Now outer darkness is what we would call hell, but there are also other like kingdoms within kingdoms. If you look at a more sophisticated diagram, this is just the basic one. So let me go ahead and show you the more sophisticated diagram.
Oh, holy crap.
This is the one that has just about everything, but honestly, there probably is even more to it. As you can see, there are levels within levels in the celestial kingdom. There are many, many things that go into each part of the plan of salvation. And this is not, the diagram that they would show to investigators when people are learning about the church. This is, after you've been a member of the church for a long time and you want to get into like a deep discussion in like a gospel doctrine class, or maybe like an institute class, something like that.
This is taking me back to cringy mission stuff.
When you were in the mission, did you have a diagram like this to show people?
But it was more like the kingdoms resembled the planets.
Right.
Like typically in Mormonism, the celestial kingdom is represented by the sun, and then the terrestrial is the moon, the telestial is the stars, kind of thing, to represent
outer darkness is like fire. I'm just kidding. No,
to represent like the varying brightness and heavenliness in each one.
That's true. But it like basically it was similar to this, right?
Basically it was that, yeah.
This is one I pulled directly off the church's website, so I assumed that, you had something very similar to this when you're teaching people.
Close to it.
So let's start off with the premortal existence. Now, what can you tell me about the premortal existence, Mr. Missionary?
Are we just doing basic?
No, we're gonna go into it.
So the premortal existence, basically everyone who ever lived or will live was there with God and Jesus and Satan. And Mormons believe that Satan is Jesus Christ's brother and another son of God and Heavenly Mother, who they briefly mention here and there, but
we don't talk about her.
Yeah, they don't really talk about her, but it's definitely part of, I don't know if it's explicitly made doctrine, but it's definitely like widely talked about in the church in like the underground.
Yeah, it's something actually I think within the last year that the church has come out and said like, we don't pray to Heavenly Mother, we don't like really talk about her, we're not gonna like discuss her over the pulpit.
Because she's so holy and
because she's so
sacred. We can't disrespect her. Essentially, Jesus Christ presents his plan, which is, I'm going to give everybody free agency and the freedom to choose, but if you follow me, then I will save you and you'll be able to come back into the presence of God. Satan presents a different plan, which is like, hey, I'm just going to make it so you all do exactly what's right and what you're supposed to, and we all make it there. nobody falls off.
Yes. But that one is bad because you don't have your agency, and agency is super important.
Basically, 1/3 of the host of heaven follows Satan, and they are what is referred to as your demons, your bad spirits. They still got cast down to earth, but they didn't get a physical body. So when you feel bad temptations, and when people are possessed and their limbs break backwards and they get stuck to the ceiling, that's Satan and his followers. The other 2/3 follow Jesus Christ, and that was us who were here with physical bodies.
Another thing that's interesting that I would like to mention, since we're going all out on this, is in the past, leaders of the church have taught that people of color were less valiant in the pre-existence, and that is why they are on earth with dark skin. Yeah, I will put quotes up on the screen so you can see this is something that has historically been taught in the past.
It's not only that, but also people with physical disabilities.
Yes, that was another one I was going to mention. It was also taught that people with physical or mental disabilities, people who were born into less than desirable circumstances, like for example, living in poverty and things like that, if you were more righteous and valiant in the pre-existence, then basically you would be born white in America in a Mormon family with privilege. Yeah. And they have absolutely backed off on this teaching. If you bring this up to a Mormon, they will talk about like, oh no, like that, we never taught that. That was just opinions. However, this was stuff that was said by prophets.
Stuff I was taught as a kid.
This is one of the things that is really frustrating about the church, is that they will say that prophets speak for God and then turn around and say, well, that time he didn't.
Yeah, it's very convenient. Very convenient way to sweep past mistakes under the rug.
Yeah. So with the premortal existence, what happens now? We've got Satan's plan. 1/3 of the host of heaven chose to follow Satan. Everybody else came down to earth. Next up on our plan of salvation diagram is the veil of forgetfulness. Now this is basically just everybody goes through the veil and forgets everything.
Yeah, so you don't have any memory of the life or pre-mortal existence. You don't have memory of being with God or any of the, like, they call it the war in heaven, where the 1/3 divided.
Yeah.
You don't have memory of any of that, which is also super convenient.
How convenient, yeah. Here's the interesting thing. They talk about mortality, our life here on earth, our 75 to 90 years of existence, as like this tiny little blip, because everything that happened before and everything that happens after
is eternity.
Basically. Yeah, it never ends. So what happens on earth is like this little teeny tiny thing, which I find really interesting, that we are, at this point, after you die, you are judged based off of like what they define as a teeny tiny little portion of your existence. But
so you've got the fall, which is essentially the same as most Christianity. Adam and Eve were the original. It's very similar. Cast out of the garden for partaking of the fruit that they were not supposed to, and because of that, everyone sins. And that's basically the premise behind the whole thing. Because everyone sins, Jesus Christ sacrificed himself to pay for all those sins so that we can be forgiven in God's eyes and make it back into his presence, which is like
I'm getting like so many of the missionary vibes just listening to you. It's like he knows this. He has told this to so many people.
It's logged away in the back of my brain. Yep.
I'm like, yes, like continue, this one. Yeah, the atonement, I mean, and you can correct me if I'm wrong because I wasn't a missionary, but that is what the church would, that's what they're going to focus the most heavily on.
That's what the entire religion really hinges on. That's what they put all their emphasis into. If you ever bring up any kind of deep doctrine or ex-mormon stuff that strays away, they just try to draw. That's the way I was taught as a missionary, is you try to divert everything back to the Savior, because so many, even we teach other Christian denominations, and those people would be calling us out on a lot of stuff all the time, and we'd be like, but no, wait, but we believe in Jesus. It's all about Jesus.
It's all about Jesus. And what's interesting is you'll see the church continuously doing this more and more with time. The whole trying to get away from the word Mormon and focus on the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. They're changing their website address to churchofjesuschrist.com. They're very much, you know, trying to be like, no, we're not the weirdo Mormons that like have the teenage polygamous marriages with Joseph Smith. No, we're Jesus Christ's church.
Yeah.
Within the church and the plan of salvation, they teach that, you know, when you're in the pre-earth life, you don't have a body. You are a spirit. You are what's their word? An intelligence?
Yes.
Yeah, they call it like you're an intelligence. You don't have a body. Part of the purpose of having life on earth is to get a body, which you will then take with you.
Which was part of the motivation in getting people to choose Christ's path and
right.
not Satan's. Because in order to become like God, which is something we get into way later, but Mormons teach that you can become like God, so a God.
Yeah.
They love to beat around the bush, but that's what it is.
We'll get to that part.
But part of that is you have to have a physical body because God does.
So let's go over really quick. I'll show you on this more sophisticated diagram the purpose of coming to earth: body, testimony, obedience, baptism, priesthood, service, and eternal marriage. You have your earthly life, you die, and then you go to the spirit world where you have spirit paradise and spirit prison. And like he explained, you have the missionary work that happens there.
Which, fun fact, is also here on earth, the spirit world.
That's true.
It's not a separate place. It's here.
Not a separate place.
It's basically like a horror movie where people can't see ghosts, but they're right there.
Yeah.
That's what they believe.
It's one of the
spirit
reasons
world is.
a lot of Mormons are like super terrified that their relatives can see them masturbating.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or just that there are bad spirits around.
Yeah. So let's talk about spirit paradise and spirit prison. You have the missionary work there. How do you be baptized? How do you receive endowments when you're dead? That is where temple work comes into it. So Mormons are baptized for the dead, and they also do other ceremonies for the dead, like getting their endowments, which you do in the temple, or being sealed for the dead. And we have done all of those things.
Yep. And it's just in proxy. There's no, because I've been asked this a lot of times, that we don't dig up corpses and baptize them. You are baptized for and in behalf of the person's name, and they have records of all this with genealogy and like a huge family tree.
That's why Mormons are so into genealogy. It's so that they can do all of this.
So they can save all the people before who didn't have the opportunity, which is why they also baptize people like Hitler. And
I will be bleeping that.
He has a little mustache. That's all you need to know.
When these spirits are waiting in the spirit world, anybody who is in spirit prison and receives this missionary work that happens, once somebody is baptized by proxy for this person, we'll call her Jan. Jan can decide, do I want to accept that or not? Because you still have your agency and you can still choose. So let's say she goes ahead and accepts it, and she is baptized by proxy, she receives her endowments by proxy, and she is sealed by proxy to her dead husband. Now what happens? The basic plan of salvation model is not going to show any of the in-between stuff. It's just going to go directly to like just resurrection, final judgment, and going to the different levels of heaven. But since we're doing this, we're going to talk about everything that happens in between. So you're not going to heaven yet.
First, we've got warning of the first resurrection, which is the second coming of Christ. The spirits of the just, whoever was good in their earth life, according to Mormonism, is resurrected.
As far as I understood it, it's in waves of like the most righteous of us. So the most righteous people will be resurrected on the morning of the first resurrection.
Basically, you have Satan is bound, and he can't do anything or tempt people for 1,000 years, the millennium. Earth will also be renewed and receive its paradisical glory. Once 1,000 years are up, Satan is let loose for just a little bit, and then will be crushed shortly thereafter by Jesus. You know, like vampire slayer type stuff. Then you have a morning of the second resurrection, which is where everyone else who wasn't incredibly awesome Mormon-y gets resurrected.
I feel like this is going to be part of it where people are confused, like what the fuck does that mean? Is there anything that we can say about people being resurrected to make it make more sense?
Anyone and everyone that lived on the earth that died comes back that was righteous. Well, and I mean, there's a second, everybody. It's everybody.
But it starts
eventually
off with the best people.
Yeah. So basically all that happens is if you were cremated, your ashes somehow are going to rebuild your body.
They actually used to discourage people from getting cremated, which I think is funny. I don't think they do that anymore, but it was
because
a thing.
It'd be really hard for your body to reassemble that way, but like I thought God was all powerful,
Yeah,
and
it
so is
doesn't make
Jesus.
sense. That's why they don't talk about that anymore.
Yeah, basically what I remember being taught is that like not a hair of your head will be lost, not like a single eyelash will be out of place, like
you'll be like
and you'll be
perfect.
resurrected in the prime of your life, I believe.
Okay, so we got the second coming of Christ. Everybody gets resurrected, good and the bad. Satan is crushed
Under the boot of the dictator, I mean Jesus.
And then we finally get to the last judgment, or the final judgment if you look on this other diagram. This is like where we all get sorted into our houses. I mean, kingdoms. Out of darkness, that's Slytherin.
Sign me up.
Where should we start? Should we start? You know what? Let's go ahead and start from the bottom.
Yeah, let's start
from the bottom. Outer darkness, Mormon hell. This is where the worst people go. Satan and his followers, so that would be the 1/3 that was tempting people. The 1/3 of the host of heaven that rebelled and followed Satan's plan, they will go down there. Sons of perdition, do you want to explain what that means?
The way I was always taught about the sons of perdition is basically those who received a fullness of the gospel, full knowledge of the plan of salvation and everything, had like basically seen God. So typically it would apply to like prophets and apostles. The sons of perdition were those people who then chose to turn away and fight against the righteous.
Yes. And that's like the worst that you can possibly be within the church.
I've seen God, by the way, and I'm turning against him. So. Sons of perdition.
The thing that is interesting about this, and like he's saying like, oh, we're sons of perdition because we turned away from the gospel and we're teaching people or like dragging people away and stuff. Most Mormons, I think, would say that we did not have a full knowledge, and so we don't qualify because we just didn't have this full knowledge the way that like a prophet turning away from God would have a full knowledge and become a son of perdition. When I was taught like in Sunday school was that even people like that little mustache man that we mentioned earlier would not go to outer darkness because he was never taught the gospel. So therefore he couldn't turn away from it. He didn't have a full knowledge of the gospel.
He will be taught it in the spirit world, but it's not like he's been face to face with God and all that. Oh yeah, and it's better to have never been born than to go there. Which
is just lovely. It's interesting to me that they say that because you think about God as being this omnipotent being who knows everything that has ever happened and ever will happen, who created us and knows like who's gonna make it and who's not. Like, why the fuck?
So why put us through all the bullshit?
Well, and why did you create people who you knew were gonna go to somewhere where it would have been better if they'd never been born?
They were prototypes.
So sad. So sad. All right, let's move up to the celestial kingdom. The one that's shaped like a star.
You've got like chose wickedness rather than righteousness. You were redeemed from spirit prison, but you didn't receive the gospel or have a testimony.
I was taught that it was a lot like Earth. Like, it was just like Earth.
Yeah. And this is where your, like, typical, like, liars, murderers, adulterers would be.
There was a rumor that went around church. Tell me if you heard this. There was a rumor that went around church all the time when I was young that Joseph Smith had said that he had seen the celestial kingdom, and if we saw it, we would kill ourselves just to get there.
Because it was so much better than regular Earth life, but it's also been compared to basically Earth life.
Yeah, from what I understand, that was just a rumor. He didn't actually say that.
It's all hokey, who knows?
Yeah, I don't know. I'll like try to Google it and see if I can find something about that.
One of the big things to note with these kingdoms is once you're put in that kingdom, you can't jump around, you can't jump up to other kingdoms, but the kingdoms above you can come down and visit you in your lowly shack.
Let's do terrestrial kingdom, the moon.
These were people who were honorable, but they were not valiant in the testimony of Jesus Christ and were blinded by the craftiness of men. So this would be people who are not Mormon, but were Christian and decent people according to the Mormons. You could
they followed the wrong church.
Yeah. You could also not be religious, but just be like an honest and trustworthy person, and you'd be here. So
yeah,
I guess that's where we honestly would end up if this was true.
I mean, blinded by the craftiness of men, yes. Honorable,
totally.
I think also yes. But I don't know, the telestial kingdom, this chose wickedness rather than righteousness. I mean, kind of, yeah.
Kind of. We'd be like in that nice cleavage spot right between the celestial and the terrestrial.
We'd either be in the bottom of the terrestrial kingdom or the top of the telestial kingdom. Yeah?
Yeah.
I'm like fine with that.
I'd prefer outer darkness.
If we do end up in outer darkness, you can all come visit us in our brimstone neighborhood. Let's talk about the celestial kingdom, the kingdom of the sun. So this one they have on this diagram split up into 3 parts. Let's talk about the one at the very bottom first, and we'll go up. This is where people who were baptized into the church. So this is where people who were baptized and who kept those covenants will end up. But you didn't get any farther than that. Okay. But again, this is so convoluted, so you can see what I'm talking about when we talk about, like, there is so much to this. You can get baptized, you can make covenants, you can keep covenants in the spirit world. So technically, you could still make it to the celestial kingdom in these different kingdoms if you were to accept those ordinances that were done for you after death by proxy.
You have to do it in the spirit world, though.
Yes.
You can't move up from... Once you're put in one of these, you're done.
Yes, true. So the middle one, this one you have to do both the baptism and the endowment ordinances.
Just men are made perfect.
Right. These are people that were valiant in their testimony, and they are able to dwell in God's presence forever. And then you have the tippity top of the celestial kingdom. This is where you have to have been baptized, had your endowments, and your marriage sealing in the temple. And this is where you have your eternal family and be able to receive God's glory. What does that mean?
That basically means you are a god.
You are
You become like him, and that's a big part of Mormonism. They always teach, and they always, when I was a missionary, we always use the phrase, to become like him. They will say that all the time, so even if they, like, try to beat around the bush and be like, well, no, we're not, like, trying to say you can, like, be more powerful than God. It's taught that you're on the same level, you become a god.
And I've done many a video about this, especially on TikTok, because the church has really tried to backtrack on this teaching, because it's embarrassing, right? Especially when other Christians, like, see this and they're like, that is sacrilegious.
You get your own planet?
You believe you get your own planet? That's
and
crazy.
Where that stems from is because people start getting into the deep doctrine of it, and the deep doctrine would suggest, well, if I can become like God, and God is also a God, then that means he went through something like this plan before, and he got the planet Earth and all of us spirit children, so that means we can keep that cycle going and have that for ourselves.
Yes. And there's lots of different things within the church that point to this. And again, I'm going to put links in the description so you can see more about it. The church has taught, like, there are worlds without end. As man is, God once was. As God is, man may become.
Yes.
Again, like, I will put a link in the description for a video that I did that's more in-depth on this, that has quotes from church leaders and stuff, but they have flip-flopped on this several times, because it's embarrassing and it comes across as a little bit wild.
And also in early church teachings, maybe still, correct me if I'm wrong, polygamy was a big part of this.
Yeah.
You got to the top level and you basically had loads of spirit wives, and wives to begin with. But you also, to get there, you had to engage in polygamy in your earth life.
That was something that, I mean, my seminary teacher taught us, was that, like, polygamy is an eternal doctrine and it's something that will happen.
They're backpedaling on that a lot now.
Definitely they don't want to talk about that one.
In only the top part of the celestial kingdom, you've got the eternal family thing. They teach, like, missionaries would go teach, like, a full family of people, and be like, yeah, if you keep all these things and you get baptized and you follow the commands, blah, 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 you can all go to the celestial kingdom and be together forever. And that was, like, the main selling point. That's the main thing for me, why I felt so strongly about Mormonism.
Yes.
But when you, like, break that down, it's like, you look at families and you look at how different each member of that family is. And most of the time it was like a parent or two was pretty staunch, but the kids didn't really care as much. Maybe one did. So
they wouldn't be included in this highest level of heaven. And like we said,
so you have your eternal family, but you're not actually with your eternal family.
Right. And like we said, you can visit the lower levels, but the lower levels can't visit the higher levels. So,
Yeah.
you know, you've got your two parents that make it to the highest level, and they have an eternal family, but no, don't.
Which is
Because-
just them
Yeah.
being able to visit you.
So, you know,
In
you
your shit.
decided to drink coffee, they'll go down and visit you in the Celestial Kingdom.
So it's really not, like, they always like to tout this as, like, the perfect plan. It's like,
Right.
if it was the perfect plan, wouldn't we all just be together and be happy?
Yeah. And I mean, it's sad too, because even like modern prophets, Russell M. Nelson has said things about like, you got to get on this before it's too late, because people are going to be separated if you're not. And I'll, you know, again, find this quote, put it on the screen for you, basically saying that people are going to be separated from each other if they're not, you know, living up to the standards of righteousness that is going to make everybody be able to make it to the highest level of the celestial kingdom and have an eternal family.
Yeah.
That is the Mormon plan of salvation. Any questions?
Leave them in the comments.
Leave them in the comments. I think we'll both be in there trying to
Yeah.
answer some of them. It is something that we were taught from, I mean, let's see. You go to
This is-
nursery when you're 18 months old.
As young as you can remember.
That's when you start learning about the plan of salvation.
Like, I have known, not the complicated diagram, but
No,
I've known
the
and am
basic
familiar with
diagram.
the basic diagram from, like, the time I can remember.
Yeah.
Like,
I even remember having like little like puzzles and stuff.
I
to help-
still
help
had
us
one
learn.
up until I got home from
That's
my
right,
mission.
that wooden one. Yeah, they like make these little puzzles and stuff to help people learn and remember the plan of salvation. This is like deeply ingrained into my psyche. Both of us and most people who are born into the church see as reality from the very, very beginning of their lives. As soon as they are able to start making a concept of life, this is what we are taught, this is what we believe. And it's one of the reasons that breaking out of that is so difficult, because you are taught that it's everything before you were born, everything you are here for, the whole reason you exist, and what's going to happen after you die. And breaking out of that is so like world shattering.
It's like the Truman Show, if you've seen that.
Yeah, it is exactly like that. Actually, I remember watching that after we left and being like, is this a metaphor for my life?
Yeah, or Smallfoot, another good one. It's your entire reality, and it literally leaving it just feels like there's like a mirror around you that shatters, and all that is just falling down, and you're kind of stepping out into
Yeah.
just blackness.
You have to refigure out everything. So the next time you meet an ex-Mormon and they have some religious trauma, or they are, you know, still bitter and angry about this, or they are trying to figure out their life, or they're still talking about Mormonism 20 years later, this is why. It's not easy. Again, if you have any questions, go ahead and leave them in the comments. Leave a nice comment about how fantastic my husband's beard is, because
You always do.
And thank you so much for watching, and a special thank you to my patrons for supporting the channel. You guys are the absolute best. Thank you guys so much. Extra special thank you to Craig Call, Doug Davis, Noble Monster Comics, Tans, and the Exmo Candle Company for supporting at the Demon tier on my Patreon. What?
I'd like to bear my testimony that I know that this church is not true.
If you would like to support the channel, there are links to do so in the description below, as well as links to all my other social media. I have a lot of it, and there is different content posted on each of the different social media platforms. So if you want to see more, definitely follow me. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye!
Yeah, I like you, that's for sure. Never have to close the door. Been a long time, a year before, and I'm missing you so bad. Gone away a month or more.